I like your setup. I've not seen this one before.
What's that?
Your layout, chart layout.
Oh, yeah, thanks. I mean, I just more and more over time realized I had to, just I don't really need to compare ETH so much, so it really is kind of redundancy on the screen, but just seeing Bitcoin and the S&P side by side is really useful for me. So I just set this up with a high time frame chart and a low time frame for both. It's pretty cool now with TradingView these days. You can actually have decent order flow like tools. Not like they're good like compared to Exo or Sierra or anything, but it's way better than what it used to be at least. Having RVol and having Delta and all these different things. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, man. Are we unmuted, by the way?
Yeah, they can hear us.
Check. I won't fart then on anything. Good morning, everyone. Oh, yeah, I've got the chat now.
Hey guys, we're just shooting the shit for a few while everyone pops in.
Mm, mm, mm. I'm not gonna lie, I feel like I haven't slept for 3 days. Or because I haven't. But
That's funny because I feel the opposite. I've been
uh,
so like chill and like kind of lazy with my like work. Like I'll work really hard for like a couple hours early in the day. Barely even traded at the start of this week so far.
no, me neither. I caught the Sunday short and that's it. Just off my phone as well. Degenerate. I was eating a steak sandwich in bed in a hotel, showing Eve. Tragic lifestyle.
I mean, I can imagine having a better lifestyle. Honestly, there's other people that are sitting there longing into you while they're at their setup with six monitors and two agar setups
Yeah.
and Sierra and
No,
Exo.
I got I got a horseradish on my screen from fucking selling. Someone explain to me why that did not impact the market much. What? Have we missed something?
Consumer index. I wasn't paying attention to that this week. We were talking about this before we turned it on. Um, Something was yesterday. I don't remember what it was. I could look actually, but um, unemployment is Tuesday. No, Thursday. So that'll be a good one.
Mm-hmm. There's this,
Oh,
I'm
there's
coping
GDP
too,
numbers
man.
too. GDP
No.
yesterday.
Oh, that might be a bad one. Zizzo, I'm coping right now too. I longed ETH at 1940. Sorry, 1346. Closed it at 1347 because it went against all my rules of trading. Basically, it was a gut instinct trade, and I was like, "Nah, this is just such a bad trade," and I stand by it, even though I could have made money. Not all winning trades are good. You don't like Magus voice? Oh, that's nice. Thanks for the
Who
feedback.
said that?
I love getting good feedback from people. We'll work on that for next time.
That's good.
Sorry, Lal. Like, oh my god, really?
I'll try hard.
Uh, so constructive.
I do actually think about that sometimes, though. All my friends have various, well, at least relative to what I'm used to, have these various accents and stuff and sound different from what I'm used to. So I do still actually think about that, how I feel like I sound like the monkey in the group sometimes. Not to be
Sorry
an
to
English
people.
simp or anything, but you guys do have a better way of speaking generally.
Sorry to the guy that says I'm on a submarine. By the way, I've got a new mic coming tomorrow. Mine's dead. What have you got?
I
A
have
Rode.
just a Yeti.
That's what I've got. It's knackered. I just bought a Rode one.
Yeah, I've had a pretty decent experience with mine. I feel like you just got unlucky or something. I had a couple issues with the settings early on, and then one of my friends helped me get the settings right, and ever since then I've been chilling. But
Nice.
I don't think
Right.
unemployment is on Friday, my friend in the chat. It is definitely on Thursday, but that is probably based off of geography, is why you're thinking that, because we're in different time zones. GG. Okay. Shall we get it going?
Yeah, let's do this.
Okay. We don't have a plan or anything, so we're just gonna shoot the shit, guys.
Yeah. If you ask good questions or get onto
Yeah,
them.
if you guys want to ask questions, ask questions. We'll generally talk about markets and stuff. I don't know if you want to if you want to start, or I can just like general market thoughts.
General market thoughts. I'm in the same camp as everyone else in the sense that we're at range highs and it looks good for a breakout. But, you know, it's a dangerous mindset in this low vol because if enough people take that position and don't get any momentum going, then, it's susceptible to mean reversion. So as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to Bitcoin right now, I'm looking to see what the reaction is of the weekly at open at around 19,570. I think we'll get up there over the next hour or so, and then we'll see. We'll see, and then I might potentially take a short, because I don't really like how the 4 hour opened personally, on ETH especially, and the Nasdaq as well. We've had a stick open, so and it's like as far like the ES. The reason I've been sort of in the camp of potential upside relief is mainly because of the ES. I think the ES looks good on the daily and the weekly, but
Yeah.
it's right now off the open, right in the sort of gap at which you would expect it to struggle, around 38.30 to 38.50. So as far as being bullish right now, I think it's probably foolish. um, my guess is this mean reverts until the news comes out later in the week and we keep crabbing. But Tim, his accent. My accent's changed since London. I've probably been around some toffs for the last few days. It's got me back in toff mode. Yeah. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, probably more or less the same. What we've been talking about, so starting with the S&P, is this is a pretty major area, this 3,500 and a half or whatever. So the expectation was, most probable scenario was build a base and then leg up from it to make the next lower high, which it looks like we're doing. Alternatively, we get the breakdown play, which I don't think is super likely, and then the least likely play is the acceptance over supply. So come up and build a base up in the like 42 to 44 area. I think this is super, super improbable. And the most likely is this first one where we come up into here, hit supply, start to round off, and then come back and test 35 again, and then probably get this acceptance lower. Yeah, I mean, from a high time frame point of view, I don't think anything's changed, so I just keep leaning into it. And yeah, I mean, I don't even really like just going over and looking at Bitcoin really quickly. I don't even really have any interest in trading this right now myself. We can talk about this more later in the stream, but I've mostly just been trading Aptos myself. At least last week,
No.
that's like literally all I traded. Which early on, like, well, we can have like a shitcoin little segment later on if people are interested, but that was like a breath of fresh air for me personally, just because volatility's died so much that I moved over to an altcoin that was doing like literally 100,000 trades in 5 minutes at the beginning when it was first listed, and it was just, yeah, it was popping. So, anyways, but yeah, thoughts on Bitcoin. Let me zoom out real quick. I think Jim probably already covered everything, but just look at it real quick. So we're at macro range lows. So personally, I'm not looking for any swing shorts. And like even intraday on this thing, since vol's so low, I'm not even really interested in trading this. If you're bullish, you got to try to catch the deviation, which is just a useless play. Like I do think that it probably does resolve to the upside temporarily for like a week lower high, but I don't even have any interest in trying to be a part of that upside on Bitcoin at least. If it's going to move up, I'd rather just catch it on something else that's going to go up more.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think it's limited upside. There's a
it
lot of
is.
roadblocks.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, so FTA at like 20 and a half. And then you have pretty significant supply that you would be hitting in like the 21s.
yeah,
Um, so, the best thing to do for the market to crush people is to just like make it look like we're going to go up to 21 and front run it, in my opinion. Because we were talking about this before we turned the stream on. Um, Everyone's looking for expansion because the range is really tight and volatility is extremely low. But we can continue for this, like what Jim said was just because volatility is low doesn't mean that volatility is about to come. It could take a while.
exactly.
So, one of the best ways for us to destroy everybody is to just do nothing for even longer. And we've seen
Yeah.
that before. So, yeah, you just need to be prepared for that as a potential reality. And if you really want to trade and you really want to learn on things, um, you can still form. Whoa, what the fuck is this pop up?
Sorry, we don't see
Holy
it.
shit!
Was it Viagra pills or something?
Yes, it was Viagra pills, and and yeah, trading Bitcoin for drugs. Um,
Do you mind if I just share my screen for like 2 minutes? I just
yeah,
want
yeah.
to talk through something
How do I do that? How do I do
that
that?
I've observed, that I've spoke about for weeks now, and I think it's quite a significant thing. Let me just figure it out. Share screen. Make sure I've minimized my Viagra pop-ups first.
I was so ready to
Um,
have a non-boomer stream, and then there we go. There's the first sign of boomering.
right. All right. So one thing I wanted to touch on is, we've got this period of low volatility, and I was quite vocal in. Hang on. I was very vocal in here. This was this was really imbalanced, significant volume. Like there was an incredible amount of volume on this grind up. It was a lot of market buying into limit selling of a big scale, and then obviously we got this big markdown off it, and obviously these guys are out now. And sort of my thought process now is the amount of volume we saw transact in this area and the low vol that we've got out of it, it potentially to me feels like large players got out here. And now we're lacking those large players now to instigate any volatility after the fact. So now you've just got this goy grinder garbage of low vol with small volume, very illiquid. If we go into the sort of 1 minute time frame, you can really see a shift in, especially over the weekends, a shift in just the candles, the amount of wicks and gaps, these kind of periods where there's just nothing in the book. It's empty. And this has been quite noticeable over the last 2 3 weeks, in my opinion. So, I think low vol is due to lack of big size traders not being around anymore, personally. And, even if we break this night, because I've said for weeks now, if it can't reclaim 19.7, then it's a dead market for me. I'm not interested. And I'm kind of still in the same boat. Like, would I take this long up to here? Potentially, but I believe that there's going to be strong resistance at this 21.2 level. So it would only be, an interim trade for me. I don't really see much more scope for upside after that, personally. So
Yeah, I agree.
but yeah, for me, this was a big shift in the market. This move here, in my opinion, there was a few $1 billion transacted. Um,
Uh,
man, trying to be
I'll make
the
a
next
point really
Andy.
quickly off what you were saying around how it seems as though a lot of larger traders just are very inactive. Um, You guys in the chat should have you got. It's been a long time now. You guys have been should have been hearing that for quite some time. People that have been around saying, oh, "I'm going to take time off," saying, "I'm not going to trade. It's not worth it," etc., etc. You should have heard that so many times by now. That should have hopefully sunk in. That's a really um, that's the much more pragmatic approach for if you want to be a professional trader. Is that you should be in like recovery mode much more these days, and maybe even in system building and stuff. That's definitely how I'm shifting. These days is a little bit more towards building, and a little bit less away from trying to build up my stack right now.
Yeah.
I'm gonna shift
And
that way. Go ahead. Go ahead.
no, sorry, carry on. Sorry.
Well, I was gonna say like I will shift that way eventually, but anybody that's followed me, I was saying the whole capital preservation stuff for a while, and we're getting to the end of that. I do feel like where I like how XO actually worded it recently. He said being defensive rather than being in preservation mode. That he said he's shifting to a defensive mindset where it's still you still can't be overly horny where you're risking drawdown and stuff right on your overall capital, but you don't want to be bearish anymore. Yeah, like what Kriptoski just put in the chat. I'm defensive. I'm not bearish anymore. So I heard him say that, and I totally agreed that's
Yeah.
how we should be shifting right now. If you're super bearish, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just it's not my cup of tea, personally.
Yeah. It's a neutral environment for me now. Like I just play the range because my mindset is if those large participants have left the building, then you got to think about the mindset of the market makers and the people providing liquidity. If they're aware that large participants that can instigate moves on around they're inactive, then they can confidently suppress price at significant levels to where small lot orders, small traders are just going to buy into that liquidity until it exhausts, and then they're just going to offload those positions back down into the range. So um, it's going to take something quite significant to break out, in my opinion. I'm still leaning towards more ranging, sadly.
Playing off what you just said about providers, people should basically realize that the majority of the movement on something like Bitcoin right now is just people's expectations around range breaks. Like it's their emotions playing out in real time. Like they're just providing liquidity in like a bracket basically, and then it's just people aping back and forth between the two sides of liquidity, trying to guess the next way it's going to go when it's not going anywhere. So it's literally just people just opening and closing positions back and forth while the providers that are still here are just saying thank you.
Exactly, and
All the effort is the market orders that are just aping.
I did a piece on flipping mindset during these environments of, use this pivot as you take profit and just deal with the extremities because the structurally what the market does at the minute is your longs come in here, your shorts come in here, and the OI unwind comes in the point of control usually. So if you could see a excessive buying into range highs and excessive selling into range lows, then trust that that's going to hold basically. Because really, is there any incentive to put a lot? If you see a lot of people, let's say, longing this candle today at 19,500, and you've got size to play with, are you going to use that size to potentially, the problem with trading size in this environment is you stick out like a sore thumb to the right people. Yeah. So is it worth your risk to follow suit of the smaller traders positioning here to cause a breakout, or is it better just to take the other side of that? Um, that's kind of how I think about things.
Take the other side of them and then wait for them to get anxious and start unwinding and do all the spend all the money that's required to move the market and make them do it for you instead of you, so you spend nothing
Yeah.
to move the market. That's the beauty of it when you're stuck in the bracket, is that the apes like they do the work, the bidding for the other other side. It's anyways,
Yeah.
it's hilarious.
Yeah. Um, and is this a breakout? Not really. Like, I don't like me personally. I don't mind jumping in on a big candle because, like, let's say we get a big break here, and you start feeling the FOMO because you've missed the entry down here. Like, if it's a legitimate breakout, this area here um, is where you want to be positioning for the next leg up. Because usually, if it's a true breakout, you'll end up getting sort of an equal leg higher. So I'm just happy to wait for it to clear some of these levels, get a large, large daily candle up here, and then look to position in here, with cap your risk here kind of thing, and then look for that move up. But right now this is it. This is a nice candle, but really relative, it's done nothing. It's not even broke this high yet. So
Yeah, when you zoom out, it's not very positive at all. It still
yeah,
has lots and lots of areas where it's gonna struggle.
yeah. I think the only thing that I would say, like, is, these two wicks are nice. They're significant. Like, one thing I would say is the reaction off the lows is much stronger, and there's quite a muted response at the highs. Um, it's basically limit sells capping price. Um, whereas mark, so you know, I'm
I was just talking about that. I actually think that the wicks at the bottom are definitely, you could argue, are somewhat bullish, but the way that every up move just slowly rounds off and then loses
yeah,
steam and rolls over is super bearish in my opinion, because what that's telling me is exactly what you just said, that we're just running and hitting into liquidity that is like wants to sell.
yeah,
And I mean, that was been one of my best Bitcoin trading patterns. Actually, is waiting for that momentum loss after the first couple impulses up come, and then getting short into it. And I mean, that's my main active trade on Bitcoin this year, I think, for intraday.
yeah.
But that's super bearish in my opinion, because that really just tells you that there's a willingness from the ask. They want to unload things still, which
I
is
think
not good.
one thing I will say, I think the willingness from the ask is more from market makers. I think from the delta, the footprint. There's been so many trap shorts in these wicks that, and we are in an area where I don't think generally people want to sell. So it's very easy to whipsaw this back through thin books, and then you basically just wait for the longs to come in and absorb it. Basically, I don't necessarily think it's bearish per se. I think it's just a case of, as long as people are trying to breakout trade, it's going to get capped. um
Well, let me reword it then. Like throughout the year, it was definitely bearish, but maybe now it's maybe just more of the sign of the times that we're just like deep into the bracket environment, like you said, and it's just market makers providing. But I would definitely argue earlier on in the trend that was like a sign for me of like the willingness to still unload even when we were late in the trend. Like, cause I tried to pivot a couple times early on. Um, Anyways, yeah, I just I thought that was pretty bearish, because if you look at it back, definitely in like the 30 to 40K range, that's more so where I'm talking about.
Feel free to go back to your screen, by the way.
Oh, I mean, it's not worth cherry picking that one example, but yeah. Anyways, we've kind of been ignoring chat. I'm gonna check out chat real quick.
I don't know how you managed to get to this being the generational low, Zubin. What's
Because
thoughts
somebody
on
said on
CME?
Twitter,
I don't really have any thoughts on the CME, to be honest.
what does that even mean? The thoughts on the CME, right?
One thing I'd like to backtest that I've thought about with CME is market reaction based on premium between CME and spot, because there's been a few instances where CME's traded lower than spot, which is quite unusual. So I need to backtest that. So if anyone wants to have a
Oh,
go
I
at that.
that's what we're talking. The Bitcoin CME. Yeah, I never really paid much attention to that myself.
No, I mean neither.
I remember like a long time ago there was like, what was it, like the gap fill argument. But yeah, was never my style.
Is
Still,
it even worth trading this? I think if you have to ask, is it even worth trading this? I don't think it's worth trading.
yeah. Yeah, what I
You've
was
answered your
saying
own question.
when we before we turned the stream on, what I was saying to Jim was like it's kind of actually sad for me because I want to basically only be a Bitcoin trader. If it was a perfect world, that's pretty much all I would trade. But that's not the world we live in. So, like, if you were trading Bitcoin recently, you're losing probably, or you're the most patient person ever, where you're really really patient on catching these kind of fear wicks and reverting them. The answer, like, because somebody asked this in the chat too, you got to just trade whatever flavor of the month shitcoin that's sucking liquidity is, which was obviously Aptos, which I haven't traded Aptos much this week, only a couple trades. I traded it a lot last week, and basically, as long as it's still doing a high rate of trades and has a good overall volume, keep trading it, in my opinion. I haven't really
Hmm.
looked at it today. I'll look real quick,
Hmm.
actually.
I think why though is alluding to this wick. I didn't even realize, but I don't really see much significance in it based on the fact that I think we took out the low was putting on like regular markets on a Saturday. So Mhm.
I know you guys can't really see this, but basically, as long as Aptos is putting in considerably more trades than other things, that's what you want to trade, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's far better things if you're bullish to take a long on. Like the two that are in my watch list currently are Matic and Sushi. If I get the trigger to go long for a more considerable rally on Bitcoin, then I'll probably take the position on Matic and Sushi. I just think the market structure is much better on those, especially Matic looks pretty good. Um, you know, I think a move even up to here is 30%, and that doesn't look out the realms of possibility, in my opinion. Retest this big range, and that's going to be much better trade than Bitcoin. And then Sushi similar, even if it gets up to 2.2, I really don't think that's out of the realms. That's a 50% move. So, well, it's not 50%, is it? What is it? What is quick math? Explain the thesis for Sushi. Well, I just think, well, basically, you're just playing beta. And the two sort of coins that are getting spoken of, well, three coins that are getting spoken about in a minute, it's APT, Matic, and Sushi. So if we get an extended relief rally, then you can sort of make the assumption that Sushi and Matic will outperform based on sentiment, I think. They seem to be spoken about quite a lot. Matic especially, quite a nice market structure in my opinion.
Yeah, and playing off that, since Aptos, Sushi, and Matic are some of the ones we're hearing a lot about, um, I off what Jim was saying, taking the kind of more directional trade on Matic and Sushi as a beta play it makes sense, but I'm not personally trading Aptos that way at all. I'm just scalping it super aggressively, just because it's been moving like so much, especially early on. It was literally moving like 5%.
Six
Um,
percent range or something. It was nice.
yeah,
This bit, yeah, I took a few scalps in here.
well, and the price history won't even show the beginning trades that I was catching on TradingView because they weren't doing the data early on. I'm telling you, Jim, these rotations were legit 5% in like a minute. Yeah, I really hadn't traded anything like that in quite some time. So it really got my blood going. It was crazy. But but to be clear, guys, I'm not like directionally trading this, right? I'm not trying to long this and short it. Now you are seeing that on Twitter, and some people might kill it with that. But personally, I'd rather just be in and out on this a lot. Eventually, Aptos might be a banger short, but I have
Yeah,
no interest in trying to be a part of that because anytime soon I'd rather wait, and watch people get squeezed out on it. And I actually
exactly.
I posted about this back in like July of this year, so it's been quite some time. But when I first read about Aptos, I kind of knew that this was going to be a thing. I even made a tweet about it that I don't think anybody even saw, but I literally drew the schematic of it going down, then going up, and then probably going down only. And I think that's probably what happens. That maybe it goes up a little
Yeah,
bit more, but then it probably just goes down only from that. Because
yeah. I think
go ahead.
the way I look at this, I've seen it so many times now where this RSI structure looks pretty ghastly, like it's losing steam. Um, I mean, there's not much data to go on the 4 hour, but
Then it just pops
um,
shorts out of nowhere.
yeah, and then it'll just go.
I'm
And
fairly
then
certain a lot of the open interest that's come into is people using their Aptos tokens right to short. So I don't think a lot. There's so much open interest that has come in on FTX and Binance, and I'm pretty certain that a lot of it is not actually at risk open interest. But there's been plenty of trend faders that have been getting clapped, especially when we first legged up from like $7 or whatever on your chart. You just absolutely anybody that was in the way of that just got annihilated. There was no
yeah,
liquidity for you to close your short out into during that. I'm sure. Just
yeah.
that's liquidation.
um, CBS calling that the Carolyn fuck your RSI div structure. Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. I wouldn't short this if you paid me. Yeah, it could nuke, but like this just is not. There's nothing. There's no. I'd rather some sort of excessive move. I've seen it too many times with these new shit coins. Your waves. Can you remember waves and stuff like that? Where it just
Yeah.
that was wild.
You guys just got to stop trying to sell into it when it's going up. That's your problem. Is that you're trying to be the hero mean reverter trade that like basically gets in top ticks it or whatever. In reality, you should just wait till momentum is obviously lost and then just sell into the lower highs following that. I mean that you're not going to be the hero where you go on Twitter and show your incredible top tick entry, but you know what's going to happen? You're not going to go underwater as much, and you're not going to deal with like max pain of just being underwater waiting for the top to round off and break down. I know all of you in the chat have been there before.
Yeah, I'd look for something like this personally. This kind of RSI structure on the 4 hour. Maybe get up into the $10 zone, 10.8, something like that. And that'd be a decent attempt at a short, I think. Could use 0.20 as a pivot on ETH. I really think ETH's gonna struggle here, to be honest. I think it probably runs back and takes out its highs, but me personally, I'm looking in this 1400 zone potentially would be nice. Anywhere up to like 1430. But it's just not a place to take along. The RSI's shit, in my opinion. Bitcoin especially, like this daily RSI structure, I can't make a logical. I can go with my gut and say, yeah, I think we come up to 21, but this daily RSI structure is giving you absolutely, well, me personally, it's giving you absolutely nothing to go on, and you can't trade on gut, in my opinion,
Yeah, and flows on.
unless it's an amazing opportunity. Like you know, your big daddy-o candles. That's when you cook. But trusting your gut on low vol grinding PA is just a recipe for disaster. Matic BTC would change my mind. I doubt it, but let's have a look. I never look at pairs, do you?
I think the flows on Bitcoin are just not useful enough when you're not getting the big like aggressive, moves where people are opening and closing positions really quickly. That's like the only readable information, and that's going to happen on your deviations. So you got to catch those, and then if you're doing anything in the middle, there's no readable flows on Bitcoin right now, in my opinion, for that stuff.
And whoever's saying I would change my mind on Matic based on this chart, I think you're off your rocker, to be honest. Like, there's nothing here that looks weak to me as far as Matic, but versus Bitcoin. Good daily structure, traded below this sort of multi-year range. Like, I don't know why you'd ever. I don't know why you'd fade this. Weekly looks good. Like, this is a nice looking chart, to be honest. I don't know about you. Mm.
Yeah, so I read the Born. I did read the McRib is back, and I'm pretty sure that somebody did some. There's like some statistical correlation between equities rallying and the McDonald's McRib coming back. And I'm pretty sure this is the last time they're ever gonna do the McRib. I think is what they said. So basically, I've been having the quant crunch the numbers, and it sounds like we need to get gig along on equities, basically.
Yeah. Well, you got to take that into factor in as well, like the seasonality, the Christmas rally, November and December might be good.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, but it's at the trouble zone right now. So, but this on ETH structurally, market structure wise, quite nice. Quite nice. Kind of pains me to say it because I fucking hate ETH outperforming, but that's only my own
Then you're
fucking.
gonna hate to hear this, but I do think that the next kind of risk on cycle, well, actually, even last two risk on cycles, ETH is gonna outperform it. So actually, that's gonna probably be my more concentrated bet between the two is gonna be to go ETH again. That's what I did last time, like whenever it was a couple of years ago. I bet on Bitcoin, but I bet much more heavily on ETH. I think the same thing's gonna happen. I think everyone's
Probably.
opinions on the whole supply and shit is going to change as soon as number is going up and is consistently going up, everyone's going to realize that this whole supply change, I think, is going to matter. The fact that the supply is not going up every day, it's going down or whatever. I don't know the nerd shit enough, but anyways. Even if supply isn't going down, just fucking people believing it is, like, that's kind of what I mean. Like, I just think that the narrative will change so much on ETH eventually.
Yeah.
But we're not there yet, and I'm not interested in stepping in front of this and trying to DCA in, which is a conversation I had with a friend last night about DCAing into Bitcoin and ETH. The argument, like, why would you risk if you have $40,000 to DCA into crypto for the next cycle? Why would you risk DCAing in now and then having when the start of the uptrend comes, it's only worth 10 or 15K? Instead, you could just
Exactly.
start buying in 10-15% higher after the trend starts and have no depreciation on your purchasing power other than a bit of inflation over the next year or whatever. And then, right, TLDR,
Yeah.
maintain purchasing power. It's the most important thing.
It is, and you got options that if you like the setup on Bitcoin for multi-month, like everything changes, the economy's back, everything's eased. You probably, if you've got that kind of money, you probably don't, can't believe I'm saying it, but you're probably better off buying the narrative-driven shitcoin that's going to inevitably come out at the time.
Yeah,
you
definitely.
know, uh,
Definitely.
sadly, Bitcoin's desirability is not quite there anymore.
Well, it's a large asset too. I mean, there just isn't money to be made off of it. Like the money to be made off of it now is for the traders actually, right?
Exactly.
If you want to get lucky off of something, it needs to be off something that's worth significantly less, basically.
Exactly. You know, I'm still happy capturing 2%. I know it's crystal ball when you think, oh, there's no good point even predicting when it's going to happen. You just wait for it to happen. People, people, people never realize how much time they have at the time. You know, you get so much time. You get so much more time than you think you do to position.
Yeah. I mean, in the moment, it's rough to realize it, but because like last trend, there was points where it felt like we had already been doing this for so long, but then everything continued to just go ridiculously higher. So yeah, basically, like the worst thing that is going to happen to a lot of you in the chat right now, brace yourself for this, is that if you get too comfy with how we trade now and you're out here grinding and you're building systems and you want to be a professional trader, If you get too comfy with trading how you trade today, you're not going to be able to trade how you need to trade in the future, which is basically going to be not to trade at all. Whenever risk on happens, you're basically just being a portfolio manager more than a trader. Now you can continue to trade, but you should separate that so you have like that portfolio management stuff because that's how you're gonna print. To be honest.
Yeah, like actually, my mindset in a trending environment is um, I actually favor shorts in a trending market at logical exhaustion points. Whenever I see a daily div, weekly div, I'll just short my stack and chill for a bit. I'm not focused. I mean, obviously, I take longs because I'm a day trader. But when it comes to protecting my underlying, I don't think people emphasize enough protecting and locking in profit along the way through hedging.
Yeah, definitely.
If you're buying a stack of ETH for the next bull run, um, I really think you need to learn to hit the red button more often as a trader. There's no point being long and then long again. Sometimes it's double risk.
Yeah,
That's
I,
just
I
my
could
mindset.
reminisce on that a little bit. So I call this, whenever I tell people about it, I call it my high school quarterback trade. Because you know that like the high school quarterback or the high school athlete or whatever, they're 45 years old now and they still remember that one insane play that they made. And they just like live in the past. So this is probably my trade that I live in the past for forever. I was wrong a couple times earlier, prior to it, but basically off of what Jim was saying, in October, maybe 3 or 4 times, I took my whole stack and hedged it out, and I was wrong on like 3 or 4 times, right, where I lost, had a little paper cut loss, and the market kept going up, and you ended up making it back, right, because the market just went up.
Exactly.
Eventually, in like mid November, maybe early November, I had a new hedge plan, and maybe a day or two later, the opportunity to hedge came, and I hedged Bitcoin at 66K. I hedged my whole stack. I used Bitcoin to hedge literally 14 or 15 different coins, including Bitcoin, ETH, and then a bunch of shit coins. From
I
that,
remember.
from
I
that
remember because I
short,
remember how well you did it.
thank you, thank you. Well, I want to make the point too that it wasn't perfect, right? It did have like two or a solid 3 or 4 failed hedges where I was wrong. But the lesson here is that the one that I got right, it gave me a really good position of strength to pivot to being bearish from when other people weren't. So I had that short. So then I was able to start unloading all my Bitcoin and ETH, which I sold all my Bitcoin. Like my lowest Bitcoin that I sold was like 59K, I think, or 58K. Most of it was over 60. And then all of a sudden, as I'm selling my spot off, I'm slowly becoming swing short, which I closed my swing short way too early because I closed it at 45K. But the lesson here is that you can use hedging to pivot. So you don't know necessarily when the market pivot's going to come. There's going to be times when this could be the market pivot, but you never really know until after the fact. And
Yeah.
basically, this short that I took let me pivot to being bearish, and basically I preserved a lot of my capital this cycle that last cycle I would have been parted with a lot of my money. Last cycle I lost a lot of what I made, and this cycle I pretty much kept it all.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I do.
TLDR is shorting is very very useful in bull
Very.
markets.
And um, it's so much easier to make rational decisions when you're at a point of neutrality in your positioning. If you're neutrally positioned, it's so much easier to step back and reevaluate the situation and make better decisions as opposed to being net long and trying to make those same rational decisions or net short, etc. If you can give yourself a few days just to think, like, it's so important. Um, and, how would you advise traders to become better during these boring conditions? Well, I mean, me personally, you just got to reduce what your expectations are. Like, be really robotic. I think it's the time to be robotic. Like, even if you just focus on $100 moves, get good at those, and then, you know, go from there. People are still trying to catch bangers in a range. It's stupid.
Yeah, those are the guys that will give up eventually too, instead of just trying to learn the correct
Yeah,
way.
the guys
Um,
that are using trend lines in a sideways market, like absolute heroes.
how to overcome anger and pathetic feelings after you incur a loss? It's a great question. I don't know if I have the perfect answer for you. Let's see. So some of it is like, it's based off personality type, so I can only answer it based off my personality. I don't really care about the monetary loss that much. I do get upset, and it's normally around my mistakes, right? So it's the way I trade. It's pretty easy for me most of the time to quickly look back at it and say that's exactly what I did wrong right there. So my mistakes are looking me right in the face. So I don't know. I'm kind of a bit of a perfectionist where I want to go in and trade as perfectly as I can every day, which is obviously not going to happen. But I set the bar
Yeah,
high for myself. So how do you deal with it? I think eventually you just become numb to it. Eventually, I always like pushing forward the argument of when you have stats backing stuff that alleviates a lot of it, right? So if you're newer, get some sort of stats that you can be using to back your decisions, because then you can just kind of let go of some of the fear and whatnot that you're feeling, because you know that you should have a statistical edge now. So as long as you have just that edge and you know that your EV is positive, you should just be keep clicking basically.
yeah,
If you're struggling, take times away. I take time. Take time off and just completely forget about trading for a bit. The last thing I'll say is, this is in my pinned tweet on my Twitter page, but you should look at your emotions like a distribution curve, just like I teach with the volume profile stuff. You should acknowledge that the majority of the time you're going to be around the point of control on your emotions where you're kind of balanced. But there's going to be times when you're at the emotional highs and emotional lows. And you got to, maybe, I don't necessarily think that you should be trying to push yourself back towards the mean, but just kind of be aware of when you're greedy or when you're fearful. It can be very helpful to just kind of take that step back and look at yourself, like out of body experience type of logic. I'll digress though.
Mhm.
There is no perfect
I think
answer.
I think one thing I would add is if you're feeling anger and pathetic feelings, incurring losses, potentially you've not calculated your loss correctly. If it means that much to you, um, you know, I go into every trade. My mindset is I go into every trade uh, almost with the expectancy of a loss. Like I know what my loss will be if I'm wrong. To the point of where if I'm wrong, I just don't care. To be honest, I don't care. Um, I care at poor trades. I don't like poor trades. Just bad trades. When you look in hindsight, and you're like, why did I position there? That's so stupid. But I think if you're feeling angry and upset at a loss, then it's probably because you're losing more than you're comfortable to lose.
Yeah, yeah, great advice. So just scale down if those emotions are really that strong. Scale
It
down and
takes
focus on the process.
takes a lot of practice to get comfortable. Winning is easy. Winning's easy. Losing is the hardest part of trading. No one likes to lose at anything. So it's a case of scaling back your position size to where that is comfortable, to where every time you take a loss, it just doesn't affect you mentally. And then from there, you then start to increase that position size as you gain more experience and more data on what your edges are, what your good trades are, that kind of thing. It took a long time for me to get it comfortable. Like me personally, I'll go. I'll be a bit personal. I'm not going to talk too much about my size, but when I was in a position to where I could trade with large size early on in my trading career, but actually mentally I wasn't prepared for it. I was very uncomfortable, so I had to scale right back um, to where it was an insignificant amount mentally first until I could build that confidence up.
Yeah, I remember some of that. And that was like,
Yeah,
anybody that doesn't understand how good of a decision that is just doesn't have trading experience, because likely what would happen, sadly, is you would have lost a lot of money probably. You know, if you were trading because the emotions that you're dealing with and stuff, you know, everybody when they're early on, you're going to make mistakes. I mean, you're going to lose money early on. It doesn't matter. So just minimizing that actual loss to where it's not like affecting you
Exactly.
is the play. You stayed in the game and
Yeah,
now you know your shit and you have your money
that's
still.
one yeah, that was one thing you helped me with is, I wasn't very structured in my position sizing, so I'd go on a run where my confidence was building and I would be on fairly low position size, and then I'm like, right, I'm ready to up the ante now, and then I'd lose that one trade because my whole emotional uh just my emotions shift to where I can't palate that kind of fluctuation in drawdown and profit, and you end up giving back all the slow grind that you've done to build up to that point just from an inability to manage that sizing. So it takes practice. It takes
Yeah,
practice.
last bit on the loss thing too. It's just like there's really no way to help you get through it. You just gotta do it yourself. This is just a huge part of trading that nobody's prepared for. Is you're gonna lose and you're gonna lose a lot probably. Even if you like have a good win rate, right, where you're winning 75-80% of the time, which would be a pretty phenomenal win rate for most people, you're still gonna lose, right? And it's crazy how it's going to change you as a person as you just accrue losses, how it will change how you interact with people and how I don't know how to say it without it sounding a little bit negative. I just don't care about anything anymore. Like nothing, things don't upset me anymore. When I deal with friends, when I deal with family, I watch people get upset about things, and like I might like scream bullshit when I get killed in a video game or something, right? But like I'm not like really ever getting upset about anything. And I think that that's 100% related to
Yeah.
just
Uh,
I've lost so many times. You know, I know Jim has heard me say this before, but when my friends that I actually, very few of my friends actually know that I trade. The ones that I do that do know I trade, I tell them I'm a professional loser because that's like the most important part about
Maybe.
trading is doing a good job of losing
Yeah.
properly.
I think you when you're a new trader, I think don't focus on your profit expectations. Focus on winning and focus on losing equally. You want to be as comfortable losing as you are winning because they both have, they're kind of polar opposite feelings, but they both have the same impact. So elation and depression, they're opposite sides of the spectrum, but will both affect you. So if you can trade with a side, I think people come into trading with the expectation of making money. And I think it's the wrong expectation initially. You've got to get your expectation when you're a new trader is to win trades and lose trades and win more trades than you lose, basically. And you've really got to go through that process, and it's a long process, and it changes with different people. It might be a year, it might be 6 months, it might be 2 or 3 years. But just don't have an expectancy on how much money you're trying to make and want to make. Just focus on winning more trades than you lose, basically, until you get comfortable. And write it all down.
Yeah, log it and just focus on getting better. I mean, there's most of the traders that I know that actually are good. They're not doing it for the money, especially not nowadays. I mean, it's a game. So if you can, I know a lot of you guys probably like playing video games. If you can make this feel like a video game for yourself, there's probably arguably edge in that actually.
Yeah. And I think people aim for perfection, and it's very difficult. And I will give you a perfect example. The trade I took on Sunday, because we got this Sunday squeeze. I foolishly took my initial short here with these equal highs, got taken out. But then, just due to experience and reevaluating and realizing the trade is right still, I just didn't execute correctly the first time. I re-entered and ended up, making back my loss and making my profit as well. So, that's another thing. Just because you get taken out of one trade doesn't mean you're wrong. Just means the market has other ideas initially. that was one of the hardest learning curves for me personally, is re re-entering correct trades after invalidation, you know.
Yeah, and for in the early stages, that's really really important. Um, for a number of reasons, I'm struggling for which one to pick first. Most importantly, probably the data set, right? Because you're just accruing that data and you're going to see, like, oh, I was right, but I just entered early twice. I mean, you get that information, and I mean, you can make better decisions off of that stuff over time.
Yeah, and you know, there's certain instances, and what you got to think about. Let's say you shorted one Bitcoin here, you got blown out. You know, if you short again because the idea is still the same, you know, you get this RSI drop off into the high, you'll make your loss back just on the move back to your initial entry anyway, to where you break even. So stuff like that is good. I'm probably rambling a bit, but
No, no, you're good. In the chat, let's see. I'm a fairly new trader. I find it's not the money loss that is damaging; it's the loss in confidence and ego that it brings. So,
yeah,
um, that's actually pretty good, actually. That is probably the sign that you have some of the psychology required to be a trader, because it should be about the mistakes and about what you did wrong and stuff, and that kind of stuff, not about the monetary loss. You're gonna have those ebbs and flows where you're confident and you're not. Like every trader goes through that, like 100%. That you're gonna be confident one day, next month you're not gonna be confident anymore because you're gonna make mistakes. It's just kind of part of the battle that you got to go through. Is you're gonna have those waves, and how do I word it? If you can push through that, eventually you'll hopefully find the things that you can be confident about. I can speak for myself and say I have things to be confident that I can lean into with my trading. I can probably speak for Jim too and say he has things that he's confident he can lean into when he's trading. And once you start to get that, um, that can help build up your confidence, because you kind of want to be confident to where eventually you want to have that, like, that armor of confidence that can't be taken away from you. Because if it is, those moments where, if you're really trading, you're trying to be a professional trader, if there's moments where you have no ego at all, you're in trouble, because you're not gonna have the balls to take risk, and yeah, you're gonna bleed that way. So I don't know where I
yeah.
was really going with that. I thought I had a better idea in my head.
Just to touch on Rapture's point,
Sure.
one thing I used to do early on, because it is hard to build that confidence, especially when there's money on the line, is if you have a trade that you think is going to go well, but you don't have the confidence to take it, stick $10 on it for that positive reinforcement of seeing how it plays out. Um, you know, it doesn't matter that you didn't go full size on it and made the money. Just log that win, so you've got it to draw from for the next time. That's how you build that confidence.
100%. That 100%. Because you're gonna see that data point saying I was right.
Exactly. It's no different to sport. You know, you can't go and start a new sport and expect to beat someone, you know, that's been doing it longer than you. You know, you got to put in that awful difficult bit. What it's the bit I enjoy. That's one thing that it's one of my uh sort of edges in life really, is I like things that are obscenely difficult. It keeps me going. Um but yeah, you got to enjoy the education, I think. Mm-mm-mm.
I was muted. I love the sports analogy. I definitely think that most discretionary traders um, can be very strongly compared to athletes or just competitor, right? It's that competition. So um, it's not trading, but it's watching some of those sports documentaries where you focus in on that legend of that sport and you listen to that guy or girl talk for a couple hours about what they went through for over their career. There's a bunch of those documentaries. I think those things are super valuable. I put those things on repeat sometimes. Like I watched, all of those major ones. I finished the Lakers one recently. That was phenomenal. I love those
Yeah,
things. So those things are great for inspiration. Because you
Yeah.
see, when you listen to Kobe or any of those guys, MJ, you listen to them talk about what they went through and stuff. You got to acknowledge that you're not obviously not going to be them, but the psychological things that they go through are the same things that you're going to go through, even though
I
you're
think
never going to be
one thing,
famous.
I think it's a global human thing of, I think the majority of people never kick into that final gear. Um, and that's where the best learning is. And it's the most difficult part, like I'll use my golf journey as an analogy of, I went from like 15 handicap to 6 handicap relatively quickly and relatively painless. And now that grind from trying to get from 6 down, that's the real difficult bit. And that's the bit people avoid because they like that quick, what's the word?
Like
What am I trying to say?
development or progress. I know what you're
Yeah, it's
saying.
that quick positive reinforcement of fast development. And then as soon as it gets to that point where you really have to try and break through the ego barrier, emotional barrier, that's the bit where people tend to fall short, I think. And it's often the best learning often comes from like real trials and tribulations and difficulty. And it's usually instant gratification. Cheers, Rapture. That's exactly what I was trying to say. And Fat Boy, sorry, mate. That's all yours as well.
No, that's well said. And added to that, or if you're if you get that instant gratification, you make lots of progress. What happens following that is probably not going to fill as it's not going to be as fulfilling for you. And I don't make this argument that much, but I think about this a lot myself. That for most of you, in order to have success as a trader, you kind of need a chip on your shoulder. You need something that is going to make you want to keep going, because the longer you go, the easier it is to just not do things, right? Like technically, there's nothing that's gonna hurt me if I just say I'm not gonna scalp it all this week, right? Like it's not really gonna affect me. But I try to force that in my brain, that part of me that tells me I need to keep going forward. And that's something that I really have gotten from a lot of those sports hero people, is that when dude has already won, he's already been the best a bunch of times. How does that guy
Yeah,
that's already been the best for, like MJ in the 90, I think it was 92, right? They won like 6 rings, right? In like a little bit over 10 years maybe.
yeah,
He's the best, right? Why does he want to get up and go prove he's the best again, right? That's tiresome. And you know
yeah,
that there's always somebody that wants to come and be better than you when you're him, right?
yeah.
So, anyways, that's a really powerful lesson. Those guys get up and they go fucking want to be the best every day, and that needs to be
Exactly.
you.
Exactly. Like
Otherwise, you're
for
gonna get
me,
run over.
Tiger Woods is my MJ. Like
Nice, yeah, okay, I like that.
he's just like built different, man. Um, yeah. Anyway, but drawing on those people as inspirations is great. Those documentaries are so inspiring. Like the Bulls documentary was fucking fantastic when I watched that. That guy is just built different, man. He's a fucking savage. He's an assassin. There's not many people I've ever witnessed like him, to be honest.
Yeah, I've watched that documentary like 4 times already. I
Man,
love it.
just different. Just built different. There's not many Michael Jordans, that's for sure.
Yeah, and something that I didn't really realize until more recently watching some of these things is it's not about the physical gifts that these guys have, actually. Now, that's obviously part of it, right? You're not going to be MJ without being incredibly athletic, but it really does seem like it was his brain that did most of it, not his body.
Yeah.
When you listen to him
And
talk.
this guy just mentioned Cristiano Ronaldo, and it's a really good example because you got arguably the two greatest players of all time. It's debatable, but Ronaldo and Messi playing in the same era, and you could argue that Messi's the sort of natural talent, whereas Ronaldo's the real workhorse. He's real like meticulous hard worker to get to the same level. And you kind of got to determine which you are in that, I guess. don't rest on your natural ability, I guess.
Yeah, that's a huge mistake that people make. I have a good friend that I roast a lot. I lay into him all the time, and it's because I know he's a very intelligent guy, but he just tries to coast off of his intelligence, and
Yeah,
you'll be fine in life if you do that. Don't get me wrong, but you're gonna be middle of the pack, right? If you
yeah,
want to like outperform, you got to do both. And if you're
yeah.
given that kind of raw intelligence, it's kind of you squander a gift, in my opinion, if you don't find work ethic to put behind it.
Certainly.
Pretty serious thing for me. I think about these topics a lot, um, especially when I'm
Another
trying
good
to help.
example, Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler's another just killer, man. Just great attitude, mentality, a hustler. Um, I could talk about basketball for ages, to be honest. I love basketball.
It's such an entertaining sport. I'm
Oh,
absolutely the worst at that. Out of all the sports I played growing up, that was one of my worst for sure. But from an entertainment standpoint, it's so
so good.
entertaining.
It's like the pinnacle of athleticism for me. Like these guys are just freaks. Like, I could watch Steph Curry shoot threes all day. It's just mind blowing to me. And it's just crazy. Anyway,
What do
first
you say? Should
retest
we wind it
weekend.
down here?
Yeah, mate. Yeah, yeah. I mean, again, we're coming right. We're coming. I'm just not going to trade this. We're coming right into an area where I just don't want to take a position. I don't really want to short it. I don't really want to long it. To be honest, I'd rather short it probably, but we're getting to that point now where you could be offside quite quickly. I think if you're not on your tiptoes.
Yeah, just go trade Aptos against me, everybody. Just come increase the volume. That's all we ask. Don't trade Bitcoin anymore.
Yeah.
All right, guys. If you have any like last set minute questions or anything you want to hear from or Jim or myself, let's squeeze them in. Otherwise, we'll probably wrap it up here in another couple of minutes. Thanks everybody for showing up.
Yeah.
Ask
Cheers. It
great
was good.
questions.
Really good.
I
I
like
might
the
have to
route we
spill
went
this.
today. The topics of conversation. I enjoyed that. Instead of it being this is an edge in trading, it was much more psychological today, which is enjoyable. I
Yeah.
like these conversations.
I wouldn't mind stealing this VOD off you for my YouTube actually, if that's all
Yeah,
right.
of course.
This was a very enjoyable chat. Favorite books. Favorite books. I always recommend Joseph Campbell, The Hero with a Thousand Faces. I like that book a lot. And Carl Jung read book as well. It's helped me quite a lot. I tend to read books that aren't trading centric but are psychological based. I like those because for me, when I look at a market, I look at a market and market structures sort of it's like a collective psychological blueprint for collective, you know, consciousness. Sounds like a Carl Jung fucking quote. Sounds like a rock cringe lord, but
No, but it's real. I totally agree. Yeah, I have
yeah,
no interest in reading about going and reading a book about trading technicals or something like that. But when getting into just like psychology is something I could really go down the rabbit hole on.
yeah. I like to relate markets. I want to gauge the emotional context relative to impact on price and whether there's any disparity in that or not. That's how I trade. It's very hard to quantify on stream, which is why I don't very often, but that's kind of how I look at markets. Is what I'm seeing in the candlestick relative to what I'm seeing from people. Mm-mm.
Next footprint
Right.
video should be this week. Belch. Let's see what day is today. Tuesday? Maybe Thursday. Maybe Thursday. I gotta record it still. To be honest, I won't even lie. But anyways, I think we wrap it up there. So everybody, special thanks to Jim for coming on and entertaining us for an hour, dropping some insights. We appreciate him. Thanks everybody for showing up.
Cheers, guys.
All right, have a good one. Peace.